A single negative thought has the power to hijack your entire day. A small worry, a criticism, a bad memory, and suddenly it multiplies, creates roots, and takes over everything. Meanwhile, dozens of positive thoughts seem to pass by you like a passing breeze. Maybe you have learned that the solution would be to fight, to force optimism to cancel out pessimism. But this battle is almost always exhausting and ineffective. And the reason is simple, although not very understood. The two are not opposite and equal forces. They work with completely different mechanics. Negative thought acts a lot like a virus. It does not just want to be thought. It wants to copy itself, spread, and take control of your inner state, feeding on your own attention and your unconscious identification with it. Positive thought, on the other hand, rarely does that. It is more like a sign, a pointer to an experience. That is why trying to stop negative thinking with more thinking usually fails. You cannot fight an invading organism on the same level where it operates. Escaping this mental trap, this thought loop, does not involve finding a better thought, but discovering and accessing a dimension within yourself that exists beyond thought. And understanding this difference is the only real starting point to get out of this cycle. Imagine you are having a calm day, maybe even a productive one, when something happens. It might be a small thing, maybe an email with a slightly harsh tone, an unexpected comment from someone, or even a memory that comes out of nowhere. And suddenly, the calm falls apart. What follows is an almost instant inner cascade. The first thought multiplies, creating dozens of others. The emotion it carries, like anger, anxiety, sadness, starts to pulse in your body. In a matter of seconds, you are no longer in your day. You are inside a turbulent story that your own mind just created. This experience is not a failure of yours. It is the default condition of the human mind, a kind of automatic pilot we inherited. It is the reactive mind in action. It works under a very simple rule. Detect a problem, whether real or imagined, and react immediately to try to solve it, control it, or fight it. The problem is that, for this mind, almost everything is a possible problem. Another person's opinion is a problem. Traffic is a problem. A bill to pay in the future is a problem. Even a thought about your own value can become a problem to be endlessly debated inside in a courtroom where you are, at the same time, the judge, the jury, and the defendant. But try to watch this cycle closely. A trigger happens, a thought, a word, or an event. Right away, the mind interprets it and fires off a reaction. The big issue in this cycle is that this reaction is not a conscious choice. It is a conditioned reflex, built over years of repetition. It is the fuse being lit, always in the same way. This first mental reaction, in turn, creates an emotional reaction. The worry turns into a knot in your stomach. The irritation turns into heat in your chest and tension in your shoulders. Your body starts to live the reality that your thought just invented, getting ready for a fight that exists only in your mind. And from there, the spiral goes deeper. To try to ease the discomfort of this emotion, the reactive mind enters control mode. It starts planning, rehearsing conversations, creating imaginary scenes to protect itself from a future that does not exist yet. It creates complex stories about what should have been done or what needs to be said. This constant projection into the future is one of the biggest thieves of your life energy. The mind spends a huge amount of resources worrying about dozens of possibilities that, most of the time, never happen. It keeps you hostage to an imagined tomorrow, draining the strength and clarity you need to live the only moment you really have, the now. The most subtle trap, however, is the response to all this. The vast majority of people, when they notice this inner mess, have as an instinct taught by culture to try to fix it. They fight negative thoughts. They try to force optimism, and they tell themselves to stop worrying or get over a feeling. But watch what really happens when you do that. When you fight a thought, you are actually giving more attention and energy to it. Trying to push down an emotion is like trying to sink a float in water. It will come back to the surface with even more force as soon as you get distracted. When you do that, it means you are using the same reactive mind, the same energy of control and conflict, to try to fix a problem it created itself. It is the ego trying to discipline the ego. It is thought trying to dominate thought. This inner conflict does not create peace. It only adds a new layer of suffering, the frustration of not being able to control your own mind. And this creates exhaustion and discouragement. Maybe you start to question yourself. Is there something wrong with me? Why can't I just be at peace? You start to feel incapable, thinking you lack willpower or discipline, when in reality you are only stuck in a system that was designed to keep itself going. This state of constant reactivity is not a personal defect. It is the collective state of humanity. It is an inheritance that eats away at the peace of many without them noticing. It is the real source of the stubbornness, anger, and anxiety that define a large part of the human experience. Most people are so immersed in an ocean of outer and inner triggers that they spend most of life reacting to each wave, being thrown from one side to the other, believing that the solution is to become stronger swimmers, more resistant, more able to fight the tide. But this endless fight is the very definition of suffering, and as a result, they spend their lives reacting to their own mental creations in a vicious cycle of trigger and response that never lets them find solid ground. And all of this comes from the belief that if they can control the events out there or the thoughts in here, they will finally find calm, peace. But the point is that the reactive mind is like a storm, and any attempt to control it using its own tools, like struggle, analysis, and control, only adds more wind and rain. But if you are here today watching this video, you have probably understood that the inner war cannot be won. It can only be dropped. The source of this unrest is not in the world, but in the automatic response to it. The constant reaction is the problem, and trying to control this reaction with more mental effort only makes things worse. But if this is the case, what is the solution? What is the path that does not involve fighting? The real alternative is something that, at first glance, may seem counterintuitive, maybe even too passive for a world that demands constant action. This alternative is calm, and here, it is necessary to stop and completely redefine what this word means, because our culture has linked it to weakness, to inertia, to a half-sleepy, relaxed state. And that could not be farther from the truth. Calm is not the absence of energy. It is the purest and most focused form of power. It is not a state of passive relaxation, but an active readiness. Think of calm as the silent center of a hurricane. Everything around can be in chaos, but at the core, there is a point of total quiet, and it is from this point that all power rises and organizes. True calm is the base on which all clear, intelligent, and effective action is built. It is as if your mind were like the surface of a lake. When you react to every thought, every emotion, every small poke from the world, it is as if an endless wind blows over that lake. The surface becomes rough, turbulent, full of waves. If you try to look at the bottom of the lake in this state, you will not see anything but a blurry and twisted reflection of the sky. The bottom, with all its life and secrets, is hidden. The mud of the bed is stirred up, dirtying the water and making it impossible to see. This is the reactive mind. It cannot see reality as it is. It can only see its own turbulence. A decision made from this state will always be a cloudy decision based on twisted perceptions. A conversation held from this mind will be reactive, defensive, because you are not responding to the other person. You are responding to the waves inside yourself, which you project onto them. And as a result, you end up living in a world of broken reflections, and you believe that this is reality. But now, imagine that the wind stops. The surface of the lake, little by little, calms down. The waves get smaller until the water becomes a perfect mirror. Now, you can see everything with amazing clarity. You see the sky reflected without distortion. You see the trees on the shore with precision. And more importantly, you see the bottom of the lake. You can see the fish swimming, the stones on the bed, the plants growing there. You have a complete and accurate view of the situation. This is the calm mind. It does not invent, does not twist, does not project. It simply reflects reality as it shows up. From this state of clarity, action arises without effort. You no longer need to struggle to figure out what to do. The answer becomes obvious because the problem is seen in its entirety, without the noise of your own reaction. The mechanism that lets the lake calm down is not fighting the waves. After all, you cannot force the water to stay still. The mechanism is simply allowing the wind to pass without resistance. In our mind, this ability to let triggers, thoughts, emotions, events pass without creating waves is what we call taking the posture of the silent observer. This is where you find the secret to turning off the reactivity machine. Inside you, there are two identities operating. The first is the one you know well, the thinker, the storyteller, the voice in your head. It is the built personality, full of opinions, fears, memories, and plans. It is this identity that feels attacked, that needs to defend itself, that worries about the future. It is totally fused with the content of the mind. For it, me and my thoughts are the same thing. So, when a thought of anger appears, it says, "I am angry." But there is another dimension of identity inside you, one that is much more subtle but infinitely more powerful. It is the consciousness that sees all this. It is the silent space in which thoughts appear and disappear. Think about it. When you say, "I am thinking," who is this I that is aware of the act of thinking? This cannot be just another thought. It is something before that, a field of perception in which thought happens. That is the observer. Taking the posture of the observer is the act of stepping back from the content of your mind and identifying with this background consciousness. Instead of being the actor on stage, lost in the drama of the play, you become the audience, watching the play unfold with calm and detached curiosity. You see the thought of anger appear. You feel its energy in your body, but you do not become it. You watch it as you would watch a dark cloud passing in the sky. You know the cloud is not the sky. The sky is the space that lets all clouds, light or dark, come and go. But do not confuse observation with suppression or repression. Many people, when they hear about watching emotions, think that means ignoring them, swallowing them, pretending they are not there. This is not observation, it is repression. And repression is just a more subtle form of struggle. It is a reaction of aversion, an act of violence against yourself. Pushing down an emotion is like holding a ball underwater. It takes constant and exhausting effort. You need to keep constant pressure so it does not rise to the surface, and eventually your strength will fail. The ball will explode out of the water with much more force than it had before. Pushed down emotions do not disappear. They hide in the body, creating chronic tension, psychosomatic illnesses, and eventually explode at the wrong time with a strength that does not match the situation. Observation is the exact opposite. It is not an act of closing the door to the emotion, but of opening it completely. It is like saying to sadness, anger, or fear, "I see you. You have permission to be here. Feel free." You do not feed the emotion with stories and judgments, but you also do not push it away. You give it the space of your consciousness so it can simply be. When you do that, something amazing happens. The emotion, which is just energy in motion, completes its natural cycle. It appears, reaches its peak, and because it no longer has your resistance to feed on, it dissolves. You find that emotions only have power over you while you fight with them, and at the moment you stop fighting and just watch them with acceptance, they lose their grip. And this does not mean you are being passive. You are being incredibly brave because you are allowing life to flow through you without blocks. This posture of detached observer does not create apathy. On the contrary, apathy is a state of numbness, a form of suppression where you shut off your feelings so you do not suffer. But observation is a state of maximum sensitivity. You feel everything more fully and deeply, but without being destroyed by it. The principle we are setting here is that calm is not a goal to be reached through more mental effort. It is your basic nature, which is revealed when you stop identifying with the turbulence of your mind. It is the power that appears when you trade the identity of the reactive thinker for the silent observer. It is the clarity of the still lake, which reflects reality without distortion. And it is a process based on allowing, not on pushing down. This understanding is extremely powerful. Before you can practice any technique, you need to understand the why behind it, right? It is the same with thoughts and emotions. After all, you are not fixing a broken mind, but learning to access a dimension of consciousness that already exists inside you, untouched and always at peace. But theory by itself does not calm the storm while we are in the middle of it. You need a bridge between the concept of being the observer and the lived experience of really being that observer, especially when anger, fear, or anxiety are at their peak. So how can you do that? How can you go from the beautiful metaphor of the calm lake to the chaotic reality of a Monday morning with urgent emails, family pressures, and the non-stop noise of your own mind? The shift from theory to practice is where most self-knowledge journeys trip. You promise yourself you will be calmer, but at the first stress trigger, the old reactive mechanism takes control and you feel like a failure once again. The point here is not to make a different promise, but simply to apply a simple mechanic, a technique that does not require huge willpower, but a subtle and steady change in the direction of your attention. This mechanic can be summed up in a three-step process, which is the heart of the practice of detached observation. First, recognize. Second, allow. And third, let go. It is a rhythm, a movement with your own consciousness. The first step, recognize, is the act of bringing the light of consciousness to what is happening inside. It is the moment when you stop being the thought and become the one who notices it. When the wave of anxiety about a future meeting starts to rise, instead of being carried away by it, you make an inner pause and simply name it, without judgment, without drama. Just a simple, here is worry, or the mind is telling a story about the future now. As simple as it seems, this act of recognizing is incredibly powerful. At the instant you identify the mental pattern, you create a space between you and it. You are no longer fused with anxiety. You are the consciousness that sees the anxiety. It is like waking up from a dream. Inside the dream, everything feels real and urgent. At the moment you notice, this is a dream, the urgency fades, even if the dream goes on for a few more seconds. Recognizing is this waking up inside your own mind. The second step, and maybe the most counterintuitive, is allowing. After recognizing the thought or emotion, your natural move, learned over a whole life, is to fight it, analyze it, justify it, or try to get rid of it. Allowing is doing the exact opposite. It is letting go of all resistance. It is taking a posture of radical hospitality toward your own inner experience, no matter how uncomfortable it is. Allowing does not mean you agree with the thought or that you want the emotion to stay forever. It only means you stop fighting the reality of the present moment. The anxiety is already here. The anger has already appeared. Fighting that is like fighting the rain. It only makes you tired and frustrated. Instead, you allow the physical feeling of the emotion to exist in your body. Where do you feel it? Is it a tightness in your chest? A knot in your stomach? A heat in your face? You simply feel it, raw, without the story the mind attaches to it. You give space for the emotion to be what it is, a wave of energy moving through your body. You become the sky, and the thought or emotion becomes a cloud that passes. The sky does not fight dark clouds, it simply holds them, letting them come and go in their own time. This allowing is the direct antidote to suppression. It is the way emotions are digested and processed, instead of being buried to haunt us later. This brings us to the third step: let go. And here is the secret. Letting go is not something you do. It is what happens naturally when the first two steps are practiced honestly. When you recognize a thought as just a thought and not as an absolute truth, and when you allow the energy of the emotion without resistance, the thought loses its power over you. It loses its magnetic glue. Letting go is like opening a hand you did not even notice was clenched. You do not need to force the fingers open. You simply relax the tension that was keeping them closed. This practice applies to all thoughts, not only negative ones. The reactive mind also clings to positive thoughts. It holds on to praise, to fantasies of success, to pleasant memories. And even though this seems harmless, it is also a form of attachment that disturbs quietness. After all, peace is not about having only happy thoughts, but about not depending on any kind of thought for your well-being. Freedom is being the space for all of them without holding on to any. The most effective response to the mind's turbulence is the non-response. It is not apathy. It is the stopping of compulsive reaction. It is the deliberate break in the stimulus-reaction cycle that keeps you trapped. Each time you practice recognizing, allowing, and letting go, you weaken the old neural paths of reactivity and strengthen the new paths of awareness and presence. This is not a magic solution. It is a practice. At first, it will feel strange and you will forget. You will be pulled by the current of thoughts again and again. But remember, the goal is not perfection. The goal is simply to notice that you were pulled a little earlier each time and, with kindness and no self-criticism, return to the practice of watching. You are not your thoughts, no matter how convincing they seem, and you are definitely not your mind. You are also not your emotions, no matter how intense they are, and you are not even your body with all its pains and pleasures. You are the silent, formless consciousness that notices all of this. You are the space where the whole experience of your life happens. But what does this mean in daily life? How does this realization change the way you wash the dishes, handle a tough email, or deal with relationships? The impact is subtle, but completely transforming. It shows up in how you move through the rough moments of life that before completely hijacked your inner state. Your attitude shifts from reactive to responsive. Your decision about how to act next will no longer be an emotional spasm, but a conscious choice, coming from a place of strength and not of weakness. The impact goes beyond a specific moment. The event itself no longer has power over you. It was a moment that happened, was watched, processed with clarity, and released. It did not become a victim story that you carry for days or weeks. Your inner peace is no longer hostage to other people's opinions or actions. This ability to respond with clarity instead of reacting with agitation is the direct result of starting to disidentify from the mind. You see that criticism does not attack you. It attacks an idea, an image of who you thought you were. And when you are no longer so invested in protecting that image, a huge freedom arises. And this changes the rules of the game at the root. The question stops being, how can I fix my thoughts and emotions? And becomes, how can I live from this space of silent awareness? The idea of simply watching the inner chaos without stepping in seems, at the same time, freeing and radically against instinct. And this is where philosophy meets real life, with its deadlines, its bills to pay, and its complex relationships. Instead of criticizing yourself, try to watch the postures and choices you can bring into your daily life. The first posture is gentle curiosity about your own inner world. Instead of treating your thoughts and emotions as enemies to defeat or problems to solve, start to treat them as passing events. Just watch them without attachment. Reflect on your emotions. What is this feeling of anxiety? Where does it live in my body? What kinds of thoughts does it bring? From this posture, choices are born. The most powerful choice you can make, moment by moment, is to create a small pause. A pause before answering an email that irritated you. A pause to take a deep breath before entering a hard conversation. A pause to simply feel the ground under your feet when the mind starts to speed up. This pause, even if it lasts just a second, is your doorway into awareness. It is in this gap that you trade the automatic reflex for a chosen response. And to strengthen this link with awareness, you can adopt simple routines that anchor you in the present. One of the most effective is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is training attention. This practice takes the focus out of the endless story of the mind and directs it to the reality that is happening now, in this very moment. It is a practice that lets you feel, for a moment, the present moment, the now, without thinking about anything else. By practicing this, you are training your mind to find shelter in reality, instead of in the fiction it creates. You discover that the present, when watched without the filter of judgment, is almost always neutral and many times peaceful. The source of turbulence is rarely in what is happening, but in the story your mind is telling about what is happening. This journey will always be deeply personal. There is no single formula that works for everyone. For some, a formal meditation practice will be the most direct path. For others, it will be walking in nature, practicing mindfulness while cooking or engaging in creative work. The method is not always the most important thing. What matters is the intention behind it. So explore the possibilities. See which practice you connect with. Watch what works for you, what brings you back to this space of inner quiet. There is no final place called calm where you will arrive one day and stay forever. Life is movement. It is flow. Serenity is not the absence of waves, but the discovery that you are the ocean and not the waves. And practice is simply what helps you remember that again and again. So take responsibility for your inner state. This is the most powerful act there is. Do not see it as a burden, but as your greatest freedom. I say this because your peace does not depend on someone else changing their behavior, on your boss giving you a raise, or on the world becoming a fairer place. The source of your calm is inside you, available at any moment, no matter the outside circumstances. Challenges will keep showing up, problems will keep coming, but the difference is that you will meet them not from a center of fear and reactivity, but from a space of clarity, resilience, and quiet. And if this resonated with you, I want to invite you to leave a comment with a sentence that sums up everything, to anchor this intention and share this insight with others. So, comment below, "I am the sky," as a reminder of your true nature, spacious and unchanging. Thank you for embarking on this journey with me. If this video resonated with you, I invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with others so they can benefit from this message. And don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, reflections, and experiences. Thanks again for watching and for joining me. Take care and see you soon.